welcome to today's episode of The Growth Zone. I am Christian Bartsch. What is the core benefit of listening to this show? Business leaders in corporate and privately held companies gain insights into trends and strategies that provide them with a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Each episode focuses on an area such as marketing, sales, innovation, or funding that is absolutely critical to the growth of companies, whether they are startups or corporate global players, where management needs to juggle the challenges of market entry or knowing how to navigate the uncertainties of disruptive developments. Mind feeding is where clarity evolves and helps solving organizational challenges. For those who listen to the entire episode, I have a special surprise gift. I am working on some great guests that are industry leaders in management, innovation, and marketing. Let's get started on today's episode. So today I'm speaking with Brian Mac Mahon. He is the founder of Expert Dojo, has consulted and coached in over 35 countries, bringing a global perspective to starting and growing a small business. He has been teaching the power of connecting in a community and process of turning a pay-it-forward mindset into a revenue generator for years. Brian combines his teaching with the experience of working with thousands of small business owners over the years. So, before I go further into detail, what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to be talking with Brian about venture capital space. Yes. And the American dream in today's world and how it is actually discriminating against those who are not part of the elite group. You might ask, which elite group? We will be going more into detail in that, and you will understand how even if you are not part of that elite group, there are chances for you to build and grow a successful business. You just have to have the right ways of doing it, and we'll be talking about that and going more into detail of that. So let's have Brian now on in a few seconds. So today I'm with Brian Mac Mahon, and he is an expert in the fastest growing startup accelerator in Southern California. And Brian, can you tell us maybe a bit more about you before we go in deep into today's topic?
Of course. Wonderful to join you, first of all. I'm very, very happy to be here, especially talking about early stage startup and how companies advance and venture capitalism and how all of those worlds interact. So yes, as you mentioned, we are a early stage accelerator here in Southern California in the States. We invest in approximately one company per week, and we invest $100,000 checks into those companies. And our intention is to find the greatest startups all over the world, infuse money into those startups, help them with education, help them with scaling, and help introduce them to the folks that they need to be introduced to become the best possible version of themselves.
Great. So we had decided today on talking about venture capital space and the American dream in today's world and how they discriminate against those who are not part of the elite group. What's your insights on that?
So I'm European initially, and I've lived in approximately 50 countries around the world. So I have a non-bias towards individual countries, and also I have a good perspective as to kind of how the world works. Now, And what I speak a lot about in the United States is not dissimilar to other countries around the world, right? You have normal people, and then you have special clubs of people, and those special clubs of people are the insiders, and many of those people are insiders due to many unfair reasons, right? And sometimes people become part of those insider clubs just because they work really hard, but the majority of them just because of where they come from, or where they go to school, or who they know, or who their parents know. And Silicon Valley is no different. So if you look at 90% of the founders who are the CEOs of unicorns, you will find that they are Ivy League investment banker type boys, mainly boys, who just happen to be extremely well connected. And the viewpoint is, look, if you can commit, or you can get commitment of a few $1 billion to be invested into your company, then your chances of being successful are extremely high. And that's the game that's been played by Silicon Valley for an awful long time. And it's extremely hard to compete against these companies when they have this type of money to be able to put into it. Now, I mean, I could use 100 examples. Uber are a great example. For many years, actually, WeWork were a great example until they were called out. Now, we took a viewpoint. We are venture capitalists as well, and we took a viewpoint that we were going to do this a different way. Now, whether we're right or whether we're wrong, I suppose we'll be able to tell in 5 or 10 years' time when people look back at our track record. But what we wanted to do was to be able to look around the world and find the greatest founders of early stage startups from all over the world, irrespective of gender, color, race, religion, or any of those silly things, and see what needed to be done to help those companies to scale to such heights that the later stage venture capitalists would be comfortable investing in them, not based on bias, or racism or sexism or elitism, but based on greed. That's what we want to appeal to. And that's what we've been certainly doing over the last 2 years, and what we intend to do over the next few years as well.
Yeah, so early startup situations, isn't it usually in USA that it takes up to 2 years to get the first check, or what does it look like?
It depends very much. Look, so normally the period, so you have two types of companies that you can start. There are two paths for an entrepreneur in life. Path number one is, I'm going to start a great company, which is going to build in revenue, where maybe I'll get a little bit of money. It might be from a loan, it might be from friends, it might be from family, it might be some of my own savings. And I'm going to build a company that's going to have legacy. And that company is going to have EBITDA, like earnings before profits and tax and depreciation. And I'm going to be able to live on the money that comes through. And for that money, venture capitalists are not really involved in this game, right? Just great companies are built, and they're built every single day. And in some ways, this is my favorite type of company, because these are the true builders who do it based on what their abilities are, and not based on the kind of money they can raise, right? Now, path number two is a pure unicorn path. Either you are looking to build a company which is valued in excess of $100 million, or you will fail. And many might say, well, I want to take path number two, but it's not quite that straightforward. Because if you take this path, the chances are that you will give away in equity up to 80 to 90% of your entire company. You will be lucky if you have 10% left. And if you take an extreme example like Lyft, the founder of Lyft, one of the founders of Lyft, has got less than 1% equity in the original company that they founded, right? So it's not clear. The other aspect to look at with the second road is that the percentage failure rate is extremely high. It's expected that 98 to 99% of all companies who go down this road will fail. So that decision at the beginning needs to be made very, very, very consciously. Like, don't get carried away with the TV shows that you see and the Shark Tanks and everything else and think, I want to do that, because the numbers don't work out as well as they do if you're building a company yourself. Now, if you go for that second road, which is my road, that means that you normally will start with friends and family money or your own savings. Normally, it's unlikely that an institutional investor is going to put money into your company when it's at when it's still in the idea or the concept phase. Maybe you might raise $100,000 or $200,000 to get yourself started. Then you'll get your proof, and you should do that as soon as you feel comfortable that your risk of losing your friend's money is at least mitigated as much as possible. Like, don't be an idiot. Don't just ask people for money straight away, just in the hope that it might work, and then say, oh, that was bad luck, it didn't work. You want to make sure that you're consequential to the fact that people have worked hard to earn this money and that they shouldn't lose it as easily as you lose it. And then what you do is you get that concept and you build some traction. And you say, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, here's what we've done. We have built maybe a small app or a website. We have tested it out with some customers. We can tell that this is the cost of customer acquisition. We can tell that this is the size of the market. We can tell that this timing means that actually we're going to have a much better opportunity of being able to be successful on this. And because of all of those things, we believe that if you give us, let's say, $1 million based on a valuation of, let's say, $3 or $5 million, in which we'll give you 20% of our company, we believe that that will take us to possibly a revenue of, let's say, for argument's sake, $100,000 a month. Might be $200,000, it might be $50,000, it might be $300,000 a month, but substantial traction based on the investment in the company. And then that's your first level of real investment. It's really your pre-seed or kind of at your seed level. And what you then want to do is you then want to say, okay, I managed to build my revenue up to $100,000 a month with that money. What's my next step? My next step is to build my numbers up, maybe by another 2 or 3 times, so I can get a Series A round. And a Series A round, the only thing that happens is that based on the increase in the revenue that you have in your company, based on the increase of the users, based on the cost of customer acquisition, now your company is valued at more, maybe 3 times more. Maybe rather than being valued at $3 or $5 million, maybe it's valued at $15 to $30 million. Now, why is it valued at $15 to $30 million? Because the investors know that they're not going to be happy with you going from just 100,000 to 200,000. They are going to want you to go from 100,000 to $1 million a month. Now, if you're going to go to $1 million a month, it means you probably will need $3 to $5 million in investment, and you need a higher valuation so that you're not going to give away all of your company. And then this continues all the way up to Series B, Series C, Series D. And then with companies like Uber, Amazon, Lyft, those types of folks, I mean, you can go up as far as Series E and Series F when you're getting investments of billions of dollars into your company.
Yeah, so there's actually quite a long path where companies can grow depending on which road you take. As you said, there are 2 paths. One is for the entrepreneur who starts this business, finances from his own business, but on his own money and maybe family money, and then tries to continue it. But it remains usually a small business unless he jumps and maybe gets a partner, but otherwise usually it'll stay small.
Correct.
But they have a different structure below, depending compared to the unicorns, as you said.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that takes me actually, as you said, these different payment rates and all the series that they go through to get money if you're on a unicorn. It's an interesting thing because I can imagine that many people out there are now sitting with all these pandemics and so on, are sitting and saying, well, I want to maybe change my business into something that's going to be less dependable on the business model it had, or maybe people want to leave a company where I think this business isn't going to survive. Someday I want to start my own thing. And now they have to think, okay, which industries are at the moment long-term? Because of course, at least from my perspective, I see that many companies that are being started now, they're trying to be a business in a crowded environment. And now it's even more crowded. You just need to look on social media, whether it's Facebook and Instagram or Twitter and so on. You see lots of different ads, even in LinkedIn starting, where you see if they're trying to be like 50 companies trying to compete for the same kind of target audience and the same target niche, then they get a huge problem. They have to find actually a niche that has a potential to grow, and you don't have this easy entry. So you have a good entry barrier that you don't suddenly start your idea and the next moment you have 15 competitors on your back already saying, oh, we can do that as well.
I agree. I mean, look, you bring up a very, very, very interesting point, which is that generally during recessions, pandemics, downturns, all of those types of things, they are the absolute best time to start a company. That is when all of the really wealthy companies, if we look back and we look at some of the great companies that have come through in the last 5, 10, 15 years, many of them have come from times of turmoil like this. It's also a time when investors make a tremendous amount of money because, and there's many reasons for this. So, and then finally, I would say it's also a great time for people who are in employment to realize that actually maybe employment is not as safe as they thought it was. Maybe actually starting a company and taking control of your own destiny so you're not continually living from paycheck to paycheck for your entire life is not the worst idea in the entire world. So let's start with companies first. So if you look at starting a company, even if you went back 6 or 12 months ago, you might have started a bar, you might have started a restaurant, you might have started something which actually was going to get crushed by this pandemic just because you didn't know. And it wouldn't have been your fault, but that wouldn't have made you feel any better with your business going bankrupt within 6 months. Look at all these poor people who are sitting with nightclubs, restaurants, experiential locations, all these incredible people who built up phenomenal companies and could never have foreseen that this would have happened in the world. And for many of those people, like it's easy for us to say, well, why don't you do delivery or takeaway? But they're crushed. And it's very, very hard for them to come back. Now, conversely, if you're starting a company today, the beautiful thing about a hurricane coming through is that it clears the water. After the hurricane passes, everything is very still. We're able to tell what are the companies we should stay away from for the next 12 or 18 months. And we're able to tell what companies have got the best chance of survival. And then there's a few in there in the middle that just take advantage of short-term benefit, right? So I'm going to ignore people who are selling masks or selling testing kits or any of that kind of stuff. These are just a bunch of people, or even screens which are going to separate people out because these are short-term solutions which can provide a huge monetary gain. Like I saw one guy who's creating software within iPads where you put it on your front door and you can tell people's temperature. Like it's okay. It's never going to be a great business forever, but it's a super duper business for a year or for 2 years to be able to make a couple of million of dollars. So you have those opportunistic things that come up. But if we look on like a longer term level, especially in the venture capital space, and our timeline is somewhere between 5 and 10 years, and on that type of level, we're saying, okay, what is happening in the world today that looks like it's going to stick? So take online education as a really great example. We just invested in a wonderful online educational company which are called Vertanza, and they're providing online sales education within universities. So we know that whether it's universities, whether it's school, whether it's online teaching in general, the world will never ever be the same. Now, do we know that our company are going to win? Well, we hope they do. But we do know that the sector is going to win, and we know that this change will never go back. Let's then look at working. We know that maybe 12 months ago, we might have thought, oh, let's invest in an office building. What are the chances of an office building ever reducing in value? Well, we look at that today, and yeah, actually, very high. The chances of an office building or somebody who owns office buildings actually making money in the next 10 years is incredibly low. Why? Because work will never be the same. People worked from home and they realized, well, okay, I don't want to be home all the time, but I want to be home some of the time. And I'm not sure if it was smart driving all the way to work. And on these changes in mentality create entirely different industries where people can benefit from. And I would say to listeners and us as venture capitalists, we look at things exactly the same way. Really, we're futurists. Our job is to look at trends that are happening in the world. It's to look at forces that are extremely current and saying, how are those forces going to impact the face of startup so we can tell which startups have the best chance of being successful. Now, startups have to do the same thing, but what people have to do, especially for your listeners here, is they have to open their eyes. And when I say open their eyes, most people go through their lives with their eyes wide shut. And that means they wake up in the morning, they get out of bed the same side, they go in, they do their teeth, maybe they floss their teeth, maybe they go in the shower, maybe they come out, maybe they put some creams on or some moisturizer or some sun cream, but it's always in the same order. And then they come downstairs and they have their breakfast and then they walk out and they get in the car and they go in the same road. And if you say to them, hey, what's happened to you in the last 3 hours? They'll say, well, nothing. I just did the same thing as yesterday. So there are phenomenal opportunities, and people can make a ton of money in the next 3 to 5 years, but they have to open their eyes and look for where those opportunities are.
Exactly, because in the end, as you said as well, not every venture is going to win, and certain sectors are just short term. And that's the thing. So many people are just trying to sell masks and all these things. I get as well lots of emails from all sorts of companies who are trying to offer me masks, even companies who are based in my own city. And it's just quite pointless when I know that actually that kind of business isn't just going to be fading away in a few months or so. The key issue is as well with all those things, it's the returns. Masks being delivered that are low quality. It's nobody over there at the factory checking whether the quality is really that what they're going to be delivering.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if your first bunch of masks is okay, but if the rest is garbage, then you have a problem, because then your client is going to either not pay, is going to sue you, or if you've been selling it to a government customer, you might even have to pay even an additional contract fee or contract fine, and that can be quite costly. And you might even lose future contract opportunities that you should have used maybe for a better opportunity, because I think there are plenty of startups that can do as well business, not only with B2B or B2C, B2 government as well. There are so many businesses providing stuff as well for governments, for authorities. There's companies providing stuff for forensics, for police, or even aviation, all these different things. There'll always be ups and downs where startups might have to suffer a certain time. But as you say, if the idea and the concept is one that is going to stay for a long time, then there's a good opportunity to really grow it and expand it, and maybe even at a certain time even multiply it for a different kind of niche. And that makes it, I think, as well very interesting. If you see that some startup some people who've started their own startup, once the whole thing is working well, and they maybe even have maybe a certain kind of equity still in it, or maybe they leave completely with an exit strategy, that they start up the next thing. And sometimes there's certain kind of elements where you could say it is similar, but it's a different business. What's your perspective on those who start businesses and eventually find that they've learned a lot from their first startup and then take it onto the next startup and become serial entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so another great point. So when we're looking at a company, I mean, the first thing, and looking at a company for investment, and our company, Expert Dojo, as I said, we invest in one company per week. We are the most prolific investors in Southern California. So this is a space we just know very, very, very well. Now, when that startup comes through the door, we look at the company and we look at the potential of the company, and we say, does this particular company have the potential to build up to be a great company? So I'll give you an example. I had a call earlier on this morning at 6 o'clock with one of our companies in India. And that company is called Yunlu, which is famous, which is the word famous in Turkish. And what they do is they connect ordinary people with extraordinary personalities. So they would have like the number one cricket star in India, or they would have the number one badminton player in India. Just huge, huge, huge personalities. A little bit like Cameo, but just way better personalities in there. So when we look at that, we say to ourselves, okay, great. Let's look at the points of importance from an investor's perspective, one by one. Number one, is it a good business? Do we believe that normal folk will want to connect with extraordinary people and interact with those people? Big tick in the box, right? Even before COVID, this was really important, because we've been in a time of influencers for the past 10 years. Now, let's then look at the next most important factor from an investor capitalist perspective, and that's timing. Is the timing of the market right for this particular space? Well, yes, right? Because before COVID, it was very simple. These personalities had so many opportunities. They'd be offered, 100,000 for this, 500,000 for that, $1 million for this. So you couldn't get big personalities because you were competing with too many outside factors. But now all of the live events have closed down. These people do not have the opportunities they had before. So we have the ability to get better and better and better and better personalities. And also, the public have never been more bored than they are right now. So we got the ability to be able to get more and more and more and more users at a lower price. So the timing is fantastic. So now we got two huge boxes ticked. Great company that we know can scale. Phenomenal timing, which means a company can be successful today. Time is our greatest enemy. So if we have great timing, that's important. Point number 3 is execution. And I hear a lot of people say, if a startup fails once, then I want to invest in them the second time. I'm not sure I agree with that. If somebody failed once, then there's no particular statistical reason why they should not fail the second time again. Or if somebody was successful once, then I would want to invest in them again. I mean, there's more of an argument for that. But if the timing and the company's scaling opportunity isn't good enough, then again, maybe not the easiest thing in the world. I just prefer to look at one word, and that is execution. And I like to look for clues in execution. Am I dealing with someone who has looked at all of the skill gaps that are required for them to be successful as a company, whether it's logistics, operations, marketing, influence, direct access, business development, technology, whatever those skill gaps are, have they done everything within their power to bridge all of these skill gaps so that they actually have a product that we can see they have a good chance of executing? And when we look at the founders, do we see a history of execution? Now, that does not mean that they can't have failed before. I'm fine with people failing before. I see it in some ways as an irrelevancy. What I want to see is, do they have the opportunity to execute? And then the final area that I look at when we're assessing startups is the area of disruption. I'm not a huge fan of disruption. If you look at what Uber and Lyft went through with their disruption, they've hardly anything left in their company because they had to spend so much money on attorneys and so many people fighting that disruption. I am much, much, much bigger fan of frictionless innovation. And that means that everybody in the value chain wants this to be successful. Now you tick all those boxes for me, and then we will put $100,000 into your company faster than a squirrel climbs up a tree.
That sounds definitely good. As I said, frictionless innovation. So that means actually that it should be something that's possibly maybe completely new and not necessarily trying to replace something else, but maybe solving a problem that nothing until now has obviously solved it. Or what could the people then understand by frictionless innovation?
So it's the difference between Mad Max, the movie, and somebody driving the most beautiful sports car in the world on the German freeway, right? So if you're Mad Max in the movie, every 5 seconds, some bad guy is coming out to try and kill you. Some of them come out with a gun, some of them come out with a truck, some of them come out with a stick, but they all want to kill you. Every single time you beat a bad guy, another bad guy or girl comes out and they're trying to kill you with a different weapon. And that's tough. And as a startup, as you go through this, and a good example of this, by the way, would be healthcare. So I had somebody say the other week, what I want to do is I want to invent a device in healthcare whereby we can keep all patients' records on this wonderful dongle, which you have all of the time. And if anything happens to you, you can show that to someone. Well, what's the problem? The problem is that no healthcare company wants that to be the case. They want to control all of the central information. So you're going to have to fight against a lot of bad guys and bad girls to get through. And some of these bad guys and bad girls have got billion-dollar companies, and they're prepared to fight very, very, very hard to make it happen. Now, I would much rather get in the Autobahn at 120 miles an hour and be able to take my beautiful sports car with hardly any traffic on the road, no speed limits, and be able to go as fast as I want. So again, an example of that would be, I mean, even the influencer platform that I just told you about. I mean, who doesn't want that to happen? The influencers want it to happen because they want to make more money. They want to do revenue share. The public want it to happen because they want to get access to influencers. The agents, they want it to happen because they've seen their revenue drop significantly since COVID has come in place. There's no legislators who are going to have a problem with it happening. There's no government agencies that are going to have a problem with it happening. There's no friction. It's innovation that's coming from a place of everybody within the value chain wanting this to be successful, except for competitors.
Exactly. And that actually reminds me of, I think 20 years ago, Jim Clark started as well a business in the US, a startup that was as well valued quite a high value. It was called Healtheon. And later on, I think it merged as well with a different startup that belonged to Microsoft, which actually they did a similar kind of business niche as the business that you mentioned now as well. Just that it was online and it wasn't a USB drive that somebody can steal and then create data privacy issues, other kind of stuff that these startups often don't think of.
Yeah, and just by the way, just to add to that, I'm not saying to startups don't go for disruption. Disruption's fine. Like I'm just saying my personal preference as somebody who's got on a little bit in life is that I much rather, frictionless innovation. I much rather when we can scale something really fast and not have to fight all of the time. But if you find this incredible product whereby the world needs that change, like you even look at SpaceX that Elon Musk did, that was not frictionless innovation. That was pure disruption. He had to find a way for the rocket to be returned to Earth and not be destroyed. Nobody wanted him to do that. Nobody, not the government, nobody else, because they knew that as soon as that happened, he would own the space race. And that's exactly what happened. Now, to make something like that happen, you need a tremendous amount of money behind you. He had a tremendous amount of money behind him. So, for all of you folks out there who are looking for that great disruption, don't be dissuaded by me. For the types of people that I'm choosing, they are people that do not have access to a tremendous amount of venture capital money. So we have to build these companies the hard way. We have to build them from the ground up, and we can't rely on, people having rich mammy and daddies or having gone to a nice Ivy League school to make sure that they're successful in their company. We got to make sure that we help them get there through the old-fashioned way.
Exactly. I see that as well, because the thing is, most companies that are started or startups, they don't necessarily have that cash flow and that kind of background of people. But it's usually some kind of entrepreneurial spirit in the mind of these people where they really want to do this. They're passionate. It's just finding the right thing. And I see it as well with that. Disruptive has, of course, one of the key issues. It's not just the energy and the stress that it puts on the management and everybody who's involved, the employees and so on. It is as well a health issue in the long term, because people start getting sick and people then eventually pass away and all different things happen or have accidents and other kind of stuff, which is not good for the business, because usually these people at the top, they are the ones who actually are putting in the colors, the flavor into the business, what makes this business really unique. And when you think of it, if you look and say, okay, if I'm avoiding disruption that is creating problems, and I look to something else, what do I have as an advantage? I usually would have then an advantage that I can focus on my niche. I know I'm not going to be disturbed, or more or less not going to be disturbed by other noise in the environment. And I can really build a good product that is eventually going to be profitable. And it might not be the $50 billion valued company, but even if it's $500 million, it's still better than a business that's just going to kill you, actually, instead of building something positive and long-term. And whether you stay with the big company for 5 years or 50 years, it doesn't matter in the end.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And when you see of that, I think as well, that's the best way to look at from from your current perspective, you are currently seeing as well in your industry and in the all different venture opportunities and that, which industries would you say at the moment have the best opportunities when you say, okay, I'm looking at industries or niches that are frictionless? Because friction, it's not really the good thing for both sides. I see it as well. It's not something that you really want to go after it.
Yeah, I mean, look, future of work is fantastic because the incumbents are weak. So when you want to go after something frictionless, you want to go after something where you can make a really big difference in that space, and you can power through, right? And right now, today, like the incumbents in the workspace, in the office space, is just very weak. So employers are looking to be able to find solutions where they'll have a lower cost of workspace and better productivity. Future of workspace. Buildings, even the buildings who would have been the incumbents that would have hated anything that would have reduced the amount of space, they recognize that the only way that they're going to be able to get through from a blockbuster moment to a Netflix moment is by riding this wave with great innovative technology that's going to help companies actually just do better workflow. So anything for me that's around telework, that's around hot desking, that's around even executive suites, being able to work from home, being able to provide equipment so that folks can do that, to be able to work safely and provide equipment for people to be able to do that, to have remote working tools, anything in that area is very powerful. I also find future gaming and entertainment. I mean, our entertainment, I haven't gone to a movie in 7 months. Which is really sad because I like my movies. But what's going to replace my movies? Is this an opportunity for virtual reality finally to break through? Maybe we passed by virtual reality. Maybe this is a little bit like, Prince Charles and Prince William. It ain't going to go to Prince Charles. Maybe we're going to go straight. We're going to pass virtual reality, and maybe we're going to go directly to augmented reality. Go miss one person on the throne. And if augmented reality is the future, then should we be looking at that? And what does that look like? And where are the opportunities in that space? I think healthcare as well. Look, this pandemic is a joke. Like how we've reacted to it around the world with confusion, with mixed messages, with so many people dying, with being so unprepared. Our healthcare systems are a disgrace. And our informational systems behind the healthcare systems are even worse. Opportunity, 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 opportunity. Like my great time, whenever I study innovation of the past, I always look at Edison. And there's some wonderful movies and documentaries and books about the innovation that came through electricity. And I believe we're going to be coming to a very, very similar place very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think business as well are definitely going to be changing, and startups have to look into new ways to do that, what they're doing, and to grow as well. So, Brian, where can people get in contact with you if they want to know more?
Excellent. Yes. So it's Expert Dojo. Anybody looking for investment can just come on to Expert Dojo. We would love to look at the applications. We're, as I said, actively investing. We do $100,000 checks immediately. And then if we like what's happening with the startup in the future, we'll do up to $1 million follow-on investment on top of that later on. You can contact me directly at brian@expertdojo.com, BRIAN at expertdojo.com. And then we have a bunch of just great resources that people can look at in our website for anything they ever want to learn about venture capital or startup.
That's great. Thank you for being on our show.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Christian.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Growth Zone with Christian Bartsch. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review or rating here on iTunes or on podchaser.com. If you found the content helpful, then share it on social media. I would like to invite you to follow our show so that you don't miss the upcoming interviews with leaders in the market. Simply visit the website follow.prmediareach.com. I will be adding the link also to the description of this episode so that you just need to click on that link. For those of you who are listening and signing up to follow the show, I have reserved a free copy of the ultimate guide on content marketing. This is the strategy that got me top corporate clients like McDonald's, Linde, Hewlett-Packard, Deutsche Bank, Volvo, and many others. That strategy has been working for over 10 years. It also got me contracts with police, transport authorities, military, and several universities, and even leading research institutes. For sure, it also worked wonders as it got me many small, medium-sized entrepreneurs and enterprises as clients. And that even included international clients from all around the world. The link to sign up for our free broadcasting service and the guide is follow.prmediareach.com. That will give you access to the most recent version of my ultimate guide on content marketing. You can follow me as well on Twitter by using the Twitter handle CAP_Bartsch. That's spelled Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel. Yes, that is CAP_Bartsch. Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel.